we know that connection with others is so important for our brain function and our neuroplasticity and our joy and our happiness. And, connecting with others is really where it's at in the second half of life, and authentically connecting. And I think that's why, a lot of women just want to be in a space of authentically connecting with others.
Hey, hey, hey. It's Christine Marie Mason, your host for the Rose Woman podcast. Rose for me isn't just a flower, just a blossoming. It's about rising and expanding and blooming, like an emergent sense of our true selves. The subtitle for the pod was From Taboo to Liberation, like a state change, being able to question the things that have been planted in our brains that aren't so helpful. But we're changing the subtitle now to Love and Liberation, which seems to be more accurate for the kind of material we've been covering. I have a lot of scientists that come on the podcast, and researchers and writers and people who are experts in their field. And I'm very interested in neurobiology, in sort of how the meat bag of the human body, with all of its component parts and signaling effects, impacts our direct experience. So since we know we're more than the body and the brain, we don't necessarily take our full identity from those things. We want to make sure that they're working optimally so they're not a distraction from living our life in as much power and peace and pleasure as we can. So this is the first time I'm having a repeat guest. You might have heard Dr. Louann Brizendine talk with me before on The Female Brain, her other book, but she has a book that just came out called The Upgrade. And it's very exciting research on the second half of life and the female brain. Not only does it talk about expecting postmenopausally to be more steady in your moods and thinking, but it also really gives you some great ideas around how to optimize exercise, nutrition, and other things. And in this episode, we talk about those things. We also talk about alcohol, why wine o'clock is a little bit of a devastation for the female brain. We talk about mantra and sound healing and a lot of other things. It's only a 30-minute show. So I went and heard her do a little book talk in Northern California last week, and she has so much more to add. So I would highly recommend you get the book. All about reading now and sharing ideas. So you can get the book and you can come and join the Rose Woman community in Facebook. There's a couple thousand women in there, and talk about it. What are you learning? Comment on what other people are learning. So The Upgrade, Dr. Louann Brizendine. So let's get into it, shall we? Tell us about this book. It's been in the works for quite a while, yeah?
Yeah, it's been about a 4-year project, actually, because, it started it before the COVID epidemic started, and then it kind of finished it during that. But it was kind of very interesting to have much more time for introspection. And I think, like all of us, it was time to get to know yourself all over again a bit better, which is actually a big theme in this book, which is about, a lot of little brain science, but lots and lots of women's stories. It's mostly made up of women's stories, both from my clinic and lots of my own stories about going through the transition and into the upgrade. So I kind of changed the language up because I think that the words menopause and perimenopause are kind of like old-fashioned words, and they're very medicalized words. They're not about really what's happening to us psychologically through this time. So, the transition is those years where our cycle, the ups and downs of, the cycle is sort of kind of coming, it's glitching a little, it's coming to an end, it's on and off. And, some days are better than others. And some days are like, oh God, how long is this going to go on? Until we get to the upgrade where your hormones are kind of leveled out and you're really able to focus better and to just kind of recharge your batteries and become your best self, like all of us would like to be, and decide who you want to be in the next half of your life.
So you make some pretty big promises with this. I think it says new power, bracing clarity, laser-like sense of purpose, post-menopause. So can you speak to sort of what's driving that? Is that hormonal?
Hormones are often the foundation of a lot of what we do, Christine. If you remember what the purpose of a hormone is to cause a behavior. For example, our hunger hormones, they make us want to eat. Our sex hormones make us want to have sex. And our up and down estrogen gives us incredible clarity for 2 or 3 days before our period starts, before the ovulation happens and you go to the second half of the cycle. So that there's we're as women, we're familiar with like those 2 or 3 days before ovulation when we're feeling a little bit more flirty, sexy, more verbal. I always tell my graduate students, do your oral exams schedule them 2 days before your ovulation, like on day 12 or 13 of your cycle. And then the end of our period, remember, is like a lot of us have the rock and roll of PMS. So we're used to being influenced by our hormones as women. And by the time we get through to the perimenopause and the menopause, by the time we get to this, what I call the transition and into the upgrade, we're not being driven by that wave of hormones that are making us have certain behaviors or certain feelings or certain emotions. We are able to be more focused. Our brains are able to be more focused, more clear, and more able to really plan for what we're going to feel like, rather than having the rolling up and down of the hormones of the menstrual cycle. So it's very good news.
Are we becoming more like men then?
Well, maybe in some ways, because their hormones are a little bit more level, although remember, they have testosterone surges that we don't have. So they can have, they can go from 0 to 60 fast. They can, they have they're driven by testosterone all of their life. So really it's not so much like becoming more like men.
Just wondering, please don't play into that trope. Wait a minute. Are we going to be more linear and more boxed in and like more steady state? Because I find that's interesting. On the testosterone spiking is similar to the estrogen spiking. Okay. But in this book, you're documenting these changes, and you're also saying that you can work with them to sort of build a lifestyle to optimize around your neurochemistry or your brain changes. It seems to be a much more holistic book than just a neuroscience book.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, you don't have to know any science to read this book, but basically, remember though, biology is destiny unless you know what it's doing to you.
I like that. Can we say that again? Biology is destiny unless you know what it's doing to you. And then if you know what it's doing to you, you can intervene. Is that the plan?
Yeah, because you can be informed, and you can basically, you can plan around it. You can plan with it. You can kind of realize what it is and go with it. You realize that your hormone fluctuations and your hormone changes are not you. That's not the real core you. They are something that's like happening to you, like the waves of hunger hormones or the waves of your sleep hormones. It's really important to know that.
But it's also things like leg strength correlates with a healthy brain at age 80. I mean, you're putting things in here that would not seem to be causative at all, but they end up being at least correlative. So what's your prescription on that?
So, what I did with this book is I reviewed all of the research studies and literature that have been done, over the last 20 years on women as we're going through the midlife and beyond. And one of the big studies that popped out to me is that so they looked at women at age 80 and looked at their cognitive scores. And they found that the ones who had the highest cognitive scores at age 80 also had the strongest leg strength. So their quads, their actual leg strength was correlated, the number one thing correlated with their cognitive ability at 80.
That makes me think of a bunch of 80-year-olds with speed skater legs, in superhero suits walking around, but it's not that kind of quad strength, right? Explain to me what it means.
So it's very important to understand this piece because of, all the literature and research studies I read and review in this book is that your muscle strength, not just your leg strength, but I wanted to stick with the data that's very clear, and the research studies that are really clear are what I report in this book on. That means that at age 80, basically, if at any age in your midlife and beyond, that you want to keep your brain strong, your muscle strength is really important. So what does that mean? That means you have to keep moving. You don't have to be a speed skater. You don't have to be a power lifter. I mean, probably people that were athletic in their younger life, if they keep active, they have a big advantage. And so, but that's a good news for all of us because they also found in another study that starting at any age, that within 9 to 10 weeks of starting just moderate kind of weightlifting and walking routine, those people's cognitive scores went up.
So neuroplasticity is correlated to just simple changes like that. It's not even, you can recover even if you've neglected it. It's not too late to start.
It's never too late to start, which was so amazing. I mean, they even had some people in their 90s in some of these studies that just hadn't been doing much at all, and they also improved within about like 6 to 12 weeks of starting their program. It's just very, very important to pay attention to our muscles all through our body, which just basically means you must keep active in a program. It doesn't have to be like going to the gym at 6 a.m. every day and like sweating till you drop it for an hour off on the, elliptical. It doesn't mean that. It just means something that's consistent. When I have patients come to the clinic, Christine, I say, look, let's just start really simple for people that haven't been doing much. I said, let's start really simply. Let's have you go outside of your house, and I just want you every day to take a 20-minute walk around the block for the next week, and then report back to me how it's gone. So it can be starting that simply, because so start where you are. Don't increase too quickly, because the biggest you don't want injuries. You probably know, it's like you can go gung-ho, you can go out there and be a weekend warrior, and you can end up in the emergency room with a broken this or that. But do it gradually. And the big key is consistency, right? It's so surprising to me that all the studies show that to keep neuroplasticity, to keep your brain active and functioning at its best as we go through the second half of life, that it's actually your muscle strength and your activity level, movement is really important. That may be for a few reasons, not just your muscles, but there's, that little area in the back of the brain. It looks like, they looks like two testicles on the back of the brain. They're called the cerebellum. There's two little, they call it the little brain in the back of the brain. They call it the sports brain. Have you ever heard it called the sports brain? The cerebellum is a thing in your brain that keeps your balance, but it also keeps your muscles working together and helps them communicate with the rest of the brain. So it would be the thing, like if you looked at a crack in your floor where the two boards come together on your floor, and you were to kind of walk it like the balance beam a little bit, that ability, or trying to do that, is aided by that little area in your brain called the cerebellum, or the balance section of your brain. So these things all work together in ways that are it's really good to know what they're doing to you and how to use them to be your best and keep your brain power.
So it's not just blood flow and oxygenation and stuff like that. It's actually activating different parts of the brain that help coordination and balance, and keeping that part of your brain online and working.
Absolutely. And I think that's what people don't understand, is that they think, the study about age 80 and leg strength being correlated with your brain power at age 80. It's not just the muscle strength, although it makes it look like it is. It's not the blood flow necessarily, but it's actual true stimulation of the brain by those muscles and those parts of your body.
So activity and doing a lot of different things, which kind of gets us to, that's the way the body movement informs the brain. But you're also talking about the brain informing the brain with mindset. What did you learn about how to use your thoughts to support your brain?
So there's a really fascinating study. I think that's what you might be relating to, Christine, in the book. You know how a lot of us have that, I call it the hamster wheel of worry, where you're worrying about something and it's just going round and round and round in your brain. It's kind of like, so they've now discovered in the brain scanner that there's these two brain areas that get into what's called kind of a Maglock. They're kind of locked in together, and it's kind of your worry center. And that there are ways in which you can release that lock by having certain type of mindset. You can do it through mindful meditation. There's all kinds of different ways that the studies show that you can kind of release that kind of hamster wheel Maglock of the worry cycle in your brain by basically finding specific things. They're usually very personal little stories that you can tell yourself, or personal stories that are going to make you feel like, I call it that there's a nurturing moment. There's one of the things I teach in the book. So what you do is you imagine some time in your life where you felt either very nurtured by It could be a parent, or the nurturing feeling you get with a beloved pet or a child, or a partner, some just moment that's a snippet that comes back to you. And you hold that snippet in your mind, and you then spend some time thinking about what the sounds and colors were, and kind of feel into the feelings of even what time of day it is, what the furniture looked like. Just you build out that scene in your mind in a very visual way, and that will become your nurturing moment meditation for yourself. So you can do that. A lot of people start their day out with that, maybe before they take their shower, just for a couple of minutes. It will help release that kind of maglock of worry in your brain. So you can learn these techniques to help yourself become actually happier.
Do you have a place like that you go to? What's your personal nurturing moment?
So my personal nurturing moment when I learned to do this, all of a sudden I got this image of myself at about maybe 3 or so, sitting on my dad's lap, reading this big book called The Animal Book, that your big pages where you turn and you see the different animals and you talk about them. And then my mother was sitting there, of course, taking a picture of me sitting on my dad's lap. So they were both there with me, being in that moment of caring for me and loving that I was there reading, just being in that moment of feeling into the nurturing of that moment. So that was my moment. Everybody has their own. And even if there are people in your life, like I had a lot of trouble in my life with my dad, who was he's no longer with us, so I can say this out loud, but he could go from 0 to 60 fast and full of, in terms of anger or being, so it doesn't have to be somebody that you have like the most beautiful relationship with all your life, but just get a snippet of one of those things. Some people get it from a special tree that they liked out in nature, or someplace in nature that they love to go, just so that you get the snippet and you can build out the visualization of that. I had another patient who thought about when his parents were divorcing, his nanny was so important to him and was just able to be there for him and call him her best boy. It just, some of the things she said to him in this little moment where none of the other children wanted to play with him because his parents were divorcing, or he just remembered and was able to build out the visual and the feeling of that nurturing moment.
Any other suggestions for releasing the worry maglock?
One of the important things is whatever you can find to do that, but it also includes self-care, right? Self-care, self-care, self-care. So I think exercise also helps people get into a different mindset, often going to sometimes an exercise class or something so that you're with other people and you're hearing music. Music can also help that. So find what it is that speaks to you, or going for your walk in nature, going for whatever place you like to go for that. So I think they could be listening to Christine's podcast.
Depending on the topic. Last week I did one where someone was railing about Facebook discriminating against women's health, and then the podcast wouldn't relax you. This morning I was reading the MIT Technology Review, and there's a new term called digital resting places, so that when you're scrolling through your feed, it's like doom scrolling. You find a beautiful picture or something that's truly inspirational, and your soul can come to rest for a moment. And then I decided that I just wanted to be that for people. I'm just going to be a digital resting place. I'm going to be a human nurturing moment.
There you go. That is so important. Why not? But we find those for ourselves. And, I find that sometimes I can listen to different meditation podcasts and things, or, I often listen to something. You can go onto YouTube and get any of them. I kind of sometimes listen to Tara Brach's. She gives a free kind of meditation on Wednesday nights or whatever, just whatever you can find that has got that space for you. That what the nice thing about making it a personal nurturing moment that's personal to you is that you can reach for that at any time where you're just kind of spinning out.
Yeah, I love that idea. And of course, meditation is my favorite thing. I've been working with mantra a lot, which kind of combines the things you're saying, the music in a class situation or listening to music or meditation. And with mantra, there's a little spot here that's like right below the brain and right at the top of where your breathing cavities come together, the bindi point. And so when you're making a sound like in Om, you'll go to a class and they'll go like Om and they'll end it with the M, but the lips are closed. But if you end it, change the sound and you go up like Om, you keep the mouth open, the lips separated, and then you let it vibrate all the way up here, the sound echoes and it turns into more of a ning sound, ing. It shakes the brain and it does a totally different calming effect on the overall nervous system. So I would say mantra with the traditional vibratory B sound is another method of getting out of the worry lock. Like it's I can't even do it now.
Yes, no, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful what
Yeah.
you're saying, because it's actually, so we were talking about how the muscles stimulate the brain, but that kind of sound, the sound healing through all the cavity, our skull is full of all these little air pockets, like in our maxillary sinuses and in our ethmoid sinuses, which is right above the nose and into that area that you call the Vinci spot right there. There's all these little areas where there's like, air pockets throughout our bones in our whole body, but in the skull especially. And those will send vibrations back to the brain. The brain picks that all up. So the mantra technique also works just beautifully. So that's a great another one to kind of
Wait, there's brain science behind my mantra practice?
Yes,
I want to do a whole nother segment on this.
Yes.
Okay, so lately, one of the big buzzwords in human health has been around our microbiome. And I've generally thought of that as not having gas or being able to digest my nutrients well. But you bring up the microbiome in the context of brain health.
Oh, yeah, it's really important. And I think we're just scratching the surface, because the research is out there and happening, but it really hasn't come up with a lot of conclusions yet, other than we do know that having a quote unquote healthy microbiome stabilizes all of the lining, the miles and miles of lining through your gut, of keeping out things that will seep into your body, causing inflammation. So as you probably have known from reading, the lot of the way to keep yourself in a healthy state as we all age is to keep your inflammation down. So the microbiome, a healthy one, helps us not get inflammatory products that get absorbed into our body, other inflammation. So that's just at the very basic level. And then there's many other layers to the microbiome in the brain that are being discovered, even that some of the causes of things like Parkinson's and other neurodegenerative diseases come maybe into our body through the gut. And a healthy microbiome can help be a blanket of protection for us. So anyway, I think stay tuned on that one. That one, Christine, is a really, really important area. It's something that's a little bit actionable, because we can eat differently to try to shift our microbiome. If you're eating kind of a lot of probiotics or healthy fibers, I mean, the gut loves healthy fibers. That's such an important thing. And that's pretty easy to get more of those into your diet easily and quickly. More legumes and more fibers.
Yeah, the gut does not love sugar or alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol.
Well, I mean, it loves it. My taste buds love it, but my body does not love it.
I think I call sugar my heroin. I swear to God. I just if I eat a little bit of sugar, I just want more. It's just not satisfying. I just want more.
Well,
sugar.
But it is truly, for like the menopausal brain, it is kind of a demon.
It's a demon, along with, surprise, alcohol. And that's something like, I also specialize in sleep during the transition as well. And so a lot of us have trouble during the transition with sleep. There's 3 big culprits for the sleep: that you have too much caffeine in your diet. And I mean, so I take women who have really got some sleep problems, and if they come in really motivated, then we go for broke, Christine, and we take out the dark chocolate, we take out the caffeine out of the diet, and we're just going to go for that for a month. A lot of people have a hard time with that, because it's such a part of their, it's all of our lives. You get that zap in the morning and it gives you a pleasure. We live in the mornings of our life on caffeine. So, but if you can cut it down by half and not take any caffeine afternoon, if you're really having sleep problems, that's number 1. Number 2 is the alcohol issue, because alcohol is actually very injurious to your brain, and even into, it's not great for breast cancer either. It's got a lot of correlations with all kinds of cancers, especially as we get older. So what happens with alcohol? If you take alcohol after 6 p.m., still in your system, maybe when you're going to sleep, then your brain, you may go to sleep easier with a little alcohol, but it makes you all of a sudden wake up 2 hours later. So if you're one of those people who's having a couple glasses of wine and you're finding yourself going to sleep easily, but waking up 2 hours later, not able to go back to sleep, that may be alcohol as the culprit. So you may want to take a look at reducing that. Or I'd have my women let's have one, if you're going to have one glass of wine with your dinner at 6:00, and then that's it for the alcohol. And the third thing is having enough bright light in the morning. So going for your walk in the morning with bright light. And in the wintertime, I have people just buy one of those. They're not that expensive. You can get for $50, you can get what's called full spectrum lights. I just put one right by my computer in the winter and have the full spectrum light. So having morning light trigger your brain, having reduced caffeine and reduced alcohol can fix at least half of women can get a really big response for their sleep.
Thank you for those tips. There's so many women that have been trained in like the wine o'clock idea, or like I just need wine. And it's really a crutch for living with the worry lock for so many of us. I have someone close to me who a few years ago decided to stop drinking completely, and his teetotaling really was contagious. And we went to a big event this weekend and people were smashed. They were like leg wrestling in the lobby, smashed. As a sober person, it was so difficult to connect with people. Like you can only really have a real and meaningful connection for the first hour and a half, and then everybody's sort of gone. They're in the sauce. And so I was thinking about like how much of the things that actually nurture us and reduce our worry, bonding with others, meaningful connection, true joy, being heard, that the alcohol blocks that almost completely. You can't even get to connection.
Exactly. So, we know that connection with others is so important for our brain function and our neuroplasticity and our joy and our happiness. And, connecting with others is really where it's at in the second half of life, and authentically connecting. And I think that's why, a lot of women just that's where they want to be. They want to be in a space of authentically connecting with others. And when you're smashed, you can't really do that. Or if you're at a party where everybody else is and you're not, that you might as well just go home, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think we found the sober corner and did our own dances. We're not nearly as expressive as the dances of the saucy crowd, so to speak. But the wine o'clock thing is something that I feel women are really entrained into, and that you have to make a conscious choice to step out of it.
Absolutely. And it's so bad for your brain. I think if you knew what it did to your brain and you care about your brain, it's one of those things that's definitely a downer.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this before, but the new research on what is alcoholism says it's an opioid addiction, that it basically alcohol stores in your brainstem, and then it builds up a tolerance to the point where when you're really an alcoholic and you take one drink, it releases the whole opioid response and you are drunk with even a couple of sips of alcohol, because it's triggered this buildup of the opioid in the brainstem.
Yeah, dopamine. It gives you a dopamine rush and stuff. So it's a true addiction.
So when you were doing this book, because it's building on your other groundbreaking book, what surprised you the most?
Well, so, when I wrote The Female Brain, I was taking it from the very moment of conception and how the brain gets built in the fetal life up through childhood and into adolescence and through puberty, and going into the fertility years and the mommy brain and postpartum years. What really, really was interesting to me, I think one of the things that really popped out to me, Christine, is a whole area of study called the positivity effect, which is surprising research data that shows each decade of our life, we get happier and happier. They stopped studying the group, I think, it went up until the mid-90s. So each decade of your life, you get happier and happier.
How do they measure happiness?
The same for all different decades. It's basically how much joy is there in your life and how much negativity is in your life. So basically the increased joy and happiness and decreased negativity.
So it's like an index of self-reported.
Yeah, so they have a very basically just a standard unhappiness index. So that was sort of a surprise, and it's been replicated over and over again. And it's a study out of Stanford that's been going on, and they've been doing a study in that category, positivity effect, for probably about the last 30 or 40 years. So it's very robust scientific data that was surprising to me, but it's also was very surprising to the researchers too, because it's that's counter to our cultural view that like it's just all downhill after 50, except it's not. The good news is, that's why I called it the upgrade, is the good news is we get an upgrade. The upgrade happens after we're 50, and it just keeps getting better and better.
What's your thesis on the why?
Well, I mean, one of the things that happens for women at that time is the transition of the cycle of the hormones, just goes away. And all of those, a lot of our responsibilities for our parenting are decreasing. A lot of our responsibilities for caretaking little children are, decreasing. So there's lots of, actual, real kind of social things that are going on for us at that stage. And we're not, as women, one of the things our hormone drives us to when we're younger women is we're driven to be, attractive and do the come hither thing with men. We want to, basically our biology is telling us to attract a mate for the sperm, right? We're wanting, for procreation, right? We're ready to, or our hormones are telling us it's time to procreate. But then after you go through the transition, that's no longer an issue. And so you're not just, a whole section of your brain is not about reproduction anymore. You have all that space for yourself to become who you really are and to take on, new things you've been waiting to do for your whole life as a woman. Finding out who you want to be and being it,
I want to be me now with a 20-year-old butt.
Oh, the butt squeezes.
Can I get that?
The butt squeezes, yes.
Yeah, I'm going to do that now. Okay, I think it's very encouraging. We've been talking about that among our community and customer base, like how much more yourself you feel. And suddenly the 6 extra hours a day that you spent taking care of children are available to you to fill with whatever you desire. And if you've done some self-development work, you have more response capacity than you might have as a young person. So all of those things add up. Usually you have a little bit more money in the bank unless, you've been a victim of one of these massive economic cycles. So there's more security. And I think that all does add up to a general sense of comfort, being more comfortable.
Absolutely. But it's also some more safety. Remember, the brain can be creative, expansive, and being open and more compassionate for others, as we feel more safe, and we can be more compassionate for ourselves. I think when you think about developing compassion and, it's being more compassionate also for yourself, because if you can do that, then you can also be more compassionate for others.
I love that. Well, to more compassion, is there anything else that you'd like to tell people about the new book?
Yeah, well, since I wrote The Female Brain, a lot has happened. I had to wait till I got to another stage of my life to be able to write The Upgrade, and just, I think, discovering for yourself. It's a book of self-discovery as you work through the book. It's all about, becoming your best self. It's also about going through that transition stage of your hormones dying down, so that it gives you just an idea of what it's like when we kind of cross over into the upgrade. We can then reach back to our younger sisters and help them through it too. Lots of women in their late 30s, kind of that transition stage starts in your late 30s, maybe 38, 39, then really gets going at about age 42. And so about 42, kind of the transition stage starts. And you go middle and early, late transition up to the early part of the upgrade, which is often for women in their late 40s, early 50s, and coming into the middle and the full upgrade. So I talk about how coming into the full upgrade. So, I think if you want to find out more about where you are on that process, at any rate, to jump in and see what it's got for you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. I wish you the best of success on the launch of this book. Thank you for all that you've done to help women understand their brains and their embodiment, and to help us be happier.
Thanks, Christine. And that's my main message of the book, is that there's all kinds of ways in knowledge of ourselves, getting neuroplasticity, getting the brain involved to help us find more joy in our life and be happier. And we can also then spread the happiness around to others, which is going to feed back on us and make us even happier. So it's that process of being there for yourself and also being there for others.
Well, thank you so much for joining me and Dr. Louann Brizendine for this episode of the Rose Woman podcast, Love and Liberation. You can get her book, The Upgrade, where all books are sold. You can join our Facebook community, the Rose Woman Community, and talk about it with other people. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can find me on Instagram at the.rose.woman, and you can find my company, which makes gorgeous intimate care products, body oil products, lifestyle support, at Rosebud Woman or rosewoman.com. Thank you. I hope you find an upgrade in your life and take care of the beautiful being that you are, mind, body, and spirit. Have a great day.